Sometimes when I speak to people about their binge, stress and emotional eating, they ask me this question. They ask me, how do I compare to others you've helped? Now, the truth is we tend to think our problems are unique, right? We think we're some special case. We think no one else could possibly struggle in the same way that we're struggling. Or we think that while something might work for someone else, it won't work for us. We think we're broken and beyond help. Now, yes, the fact is you are unique. No one else has your life or your life experiences or your job or your marriage or your kids or your health. No one else has the exact same set of circumstances or challenges as you. But after 10 years of working with people on their binge, stress and emotional eating, and after 10 years of talking, not with just a dozen people, I've talked with thousands of people. There are some pretty common themes and trends that I'd like to share. Now, in case you don't know, my name is Martin Flood. I'm a lifestyle medicine practitioner and the founder of the Break Free Nutrition Clinic, where I help struggling men and women all over the globe end the struggle with food. Okay, so what are some of the common themes I've noticed about people who struggle with food? Well, first of all, there tends to be some common foods that people struggle with, right? So in terms of sweet foods, the most common foods people struggle with, probably no surprise, chocolate and ice cream. In terms of savoury foods, the most common ones are nuts, breakfast cereals, that's a surprise for a lot of people. So cereals, chips, cheese and crackers, peanut butter and bread, okay? In terms of when people struggle the most, well, most struggle with binging and emotional eating and stress eating in the evenings, okay? So after work or after dinner, okay? Or they struggle at the end of the week and on the weekends. So for a lot of people, they can kind of stay on track with things, maybe Monday to Thursday, a lot of the time. And then all of a sudden, maybe on a Friday and then sort of into the weekend, the wheels fall off, okay? And their eating feels a bit more out of control. So that's what they struggle with in terms of the foods, and that's when they struggle the most. Now, in terms of the cost, this is where I see a lot of other common themes and trends. So let's look at the cost in terms of calories, right? So the cost in terms of calories, well, it really depends on how often and how much you eat. So for someone who maybe, say, binges on a block of chocolate or on half a tub of ice cream, say, that's about 1,200 calories. Now, if you're doing that, say, 3 times a week on average, that's about 3,500 calories, which is really 2 days worth of extra calories every week. But not everyone binges, right? A lot of people are just stuck in a stress eating or a snacking kind of pattern of eating. And a snacking pattern of eating or might look like they just grab a handful of this and a handful of that a few times through the day. So they might grab a handful of nuts, say, or they might grab some dried fruit, or they might have a bowl of cereal, or they might have a few squares of chocolate, or they might have a handful of chips, or they might have a couple of pieces of cheese, or they have a few crackers here or a few crackers there, or whatever it is, right? But here's what we know, is that that kind of snacking throughout the day pattern, that can add up to 600, 700 or even 800 calories extra per day. And so over a week, again, it's an added 2 or 3 extra days worth of calories. So that's the calorie cost. Well, what about the dollar cost? Because this also surprises a lot of people. Here's the thing. If you're buying a lot of snack foods, a lot of processed foods, what we know is that on average, they cost about 40 cents per 100 calories. It's remarkable how accurate that is in terms of if you go to the supermarket and buy those foods, you're probably paying on average 40 cents per 100 calories. Of course, if you're buying those foods at a cafe or a restaurant or somewhere like that, you're going to be paying a lot more. And you could be paying like $1 or more per 100 calories. So like a 500 calorie muffin could cost you $5. Buy it at the supermarket and it'll be quite a bit cheaper. Anyway, let's assume for this exercise that every 100 calories costs about 70 cents. So we're buying some from the supermarket and we're buying some when we're out and about. So let's use the average of 70 cents per 100 calories, which, by the way, I've done this maths many times with many people and it works out remarkably accurate. So if you're stuck in a binging pattern, which means if you're binging on those 3,500 calories a week extra, that's going to be costing you between $25, $30 a week in binging food, okay? And if you add that up over 5 years, that's about $6,000 to $7,000. But let's say you don't binge, but you just are stuck in a snacking pattern. Okay, so you're the person who might eat 600, 700, 800 extra calories a day just because you're snacking. Well, here's what we know. At that 70 cents per 100 calories, that adds up again to about $40 a week in extra snacking calories. Over 5 years, 40 bucks a week, that hurts because that's about 10 grand. That's a lot of money. Okay, so that's the calorie cost and that's the dollar cost of the extra food, right? But believe it or not, that's not where the true cost really is. So where does the true cost lie? Well, it lies in some of the other consequences of what our binge, stress and emotional eating cause. And one of them is the cost on our mental energy. Most of the people I speak with say that they waste so much time and energy focusing on the food. It's the plotting and planning. It's the arguing with themselves. It's the second guessing with themselves. It's the questioning themselves. It's the constant asking and checking in. Am I hungry? Am I eating now or later? What am I eating? Is this a good food or a bad food? Is this a good day or a bad day? Am I on my plan or off my plan? It's the judging. It's the criticizing. And it's the constant worry about what I last ate and what I'm going to eat next. And it's the researching. It's the looking for answers. It's the thinking. It's the overanalyzing. It's the asking what's wrong with me question. And the sum total of all that is just exhaustion and overwhelm and an inability, a fundamental inability to show up as your best self. Because it causes a lot of disappointment. It causes frustration. It causes anger. It causes regret and guilt and shame and anxiety. And these feelings can just take over. And it's the nagging, sinking, hopeless feeling that deep down you know that you're just not taking good enough care of yourself. And it's a downward spiral because the goal now isn't about flourishing or being your best self or enjoying life to the full, because now the goal is just surviving. The goal is just getting through the day. And that's sad because it means you're never going to experience what it's like to step into the best version of you. And all of that, if that isn't enough, the thing is that has a ripple effect on other things in your life. And it's the big three: career, health, and relationships. So let's look at your career and your work life. So what's the cost of not being able to focus on your work? Do you get a sense that your binge and your emotional eating somehow limits your performance and productivity at work? And be honest here. How is this day-to-day struggle with your eating and with food impacting the way you show up in your career in your job, in your work? Does it affect the way you relate to your workmates? Does it affect the way you show up with your clients? Is it impacting your ability to focus and concentrate and be creative? Is it holding you back from doing some of your best work and serving the people you are meant to serve? And what are the consequences of that on your career? I mean, do you secretly feel that you can't put yourself out there because you simply don't have the mental bandwidth to succeed? And then there's the second big life area where all this plays out, right? On our health. I mean, there probably will be consequences for your weight at some point. Because what used to work in terms of managing your weight, it won't work forever. For some people, they've offset all the extra calories through exercising or over-exercising. For some people, all they ever think about is hitting the gym or getting that 5K run in or getting their 20,000 steps a day in. But what happens when you get injured or you fall ill or you get older and you can't exercise and you can't sustain that level of activity or intensity? Well, that's when all of a sudden you start gaining weight. And we're probably talking not just 1 or 2 kilos, we're probably going to be talking 5 or 10 over 1 or 2 years, right? And that means a whole new wardrobe. And the thing is, at that point, dieting no longer works because now your metabolism is less flexible than it once was. And it's less inclined to want to give up the weight. And then there are the risks for type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease, gut problems, autoimmune problems. And we know that people who struggle with food, who really deeply struggle with food, have a higher incidence of all these kind of things. And what about your relationships? Are you truly and deeply connected with your partner and with your kids? Or do you find it really hard to be present for them? I mean, meal times for a lot of people I know, it's struggle town, it's stress time, it's full-on anxiety. So when everyone else just wants to connect and enjoy that moment, can you really be there present with them and focus on them? Or are you more in your head, in your food-focused thinking, in your anxiety, in your stress? And then the worry and anxiety just gets even worse, right? Because you're forever fearing that you're just not showing up in your relationships, with your kids, with your partner in the way that you like. And you try and hide all this struggling from them, right? I mean, how much of your binge, stress and emotional eating is done in private? And how does that make you feel? The problem is it just adds this another layer of stress and overwhelm because you've got this dark secret you don't want anyone else to know about. If only they knew, what would they say and think? And how isolating is that? You just feel like withdrawing. You don't feel like communicating. You don't feel like socializing. You don't feel like being intimate or putting yourself out there. You just want to play small and play safe. And so the people we care about the most, we put those crucial relationships at risk because we're stuck in a pattern of eating that takes our confidence away and just makes us feel like crap. Now, of course, everyone's food struggles are a little different, right? But here's the thing, no matter how your food strugglings are showing up for you, I know that it's causing some bigger problems. I know that it's causing some pain and suffering because it always does. And a lot of this suffering and all this hurt, it's unnecessary. And it's unnecessary because there is a way out of all this pain and struggling. Binge, stress and emotional eating, these are all just patterns and pathways in the brain. And these patterns and pathways can be rewired. It's neuroscience, not rocket science. And if you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll probably know what I'm talking about in terms of the 3 brain-based networks that are responsible for 90% of why we eat, how we eat, what we eat, when we eat, and all the rest of it. But before getting into any of that, the first step is to just be honest with yourself about what all this struggling with food is really costing you. What's the end game here? In 5 years' time, if you're still in this tug of war with food and with yourself, what's the impact of that going to be? I mean, the average woman over 50 gains about 4 kilograms in weight every 5 years. That's a fact. But if you struggle with binge and stress and emotional eating in a fairly big way, then we know that figure probably goes up to about 6, 7, 8 kilos of additional weight gain every 5 years. So in 10 years, chances are you're going to be maybe anything like up to 15 kilos heavier than you are now. How is that going to make you feel? And the financial cost of that in 10 years? Well, we know just in the extra calories and food alone, that could be $10,000. And that doesn't even include the limiting impact all this struggling has on your career and the missed opportunities you're not seizing right now because you're still struggling with food. And what's the true impact going to be on your mental health and on the way you feel about yourself and on your general health and happiness? And who else in your family is going to be affected? If you've got young kids, how would you feel if you pass these patterns on to them? If you've got young kids, you don't have 5 or 10 years to work this stuff out. And as much as you'd like to think you can hide all this from them, wouldn't it just be easier if you didn't have to? So if you don't want to spend the next 5 or 10 years struggling in silence trying to work this stuff out, if you're ready to be done with this and done with it now, then all you need to do is reach out. All you need to do is go to breakfreenutrition.com/talk and book a free breakthrough call with me and let me help you get some clarity. Because on that call, I'm going to ask a series of questions. And those questions are going to help me work out what's really happening. I'm going to get to the truth. And then I'm going to lay it all out. I'm going to show you and tell you exactly what's going on. And then I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do to fix it. And if I don't think I'm the right person to help you, I'll say so and I'll point you in the direction you need to head instead. But if I'm 100% certain I can help you, I will show you how. I will give you the plan. I will show you the way. This is what I do. I help smart, busy, overworked, and overcommitted women and some men figure the one thing in their lives they can't figure out on their own. This is my thing, and I'm pretty darn good at it. And when it comes to binge, stress, and emotional eating, I've seen it all. I've worked with people who have binged all their lives since they were kids, and they thought they were broken. And now they're binge free. And they're binge free not because I magically fixed them. They were never broken in the first place. They're binge free because I showed them how to rewire the pathways that were keeping them locked up in the same patterns and cycles with food time and time again. And I've also worked with people who don't binge. People who are just stuck in some unhealthy overeating or emotional eating patterns. People who are just sick and tired of the revolving door of dieting and meal planning and weight loss programs. People who simply want to feel more in charge of their choices and more in charge of their health without feeling like they need more rules or more restriction or more willpower to do it. I've even worked with health professionals, doctors, dietitians, nutritionists, nurses, surgeons, pharmacists, podiatrists, physios, psychologists, personal trainers, and health coaches. I've worked with people who you would not think would struggle with food. I've worked with people who you would think would have it all worked out. But the relationship we have with food has nothing to do with intelligence. And that's because the problem is never about a lack of knowledge or willpower. You can have 3 or 4 university degrees and still struggle with food. Binge, stress, and emotional eating doesn't discriminate. And you wouldn't believe the number of health professionals I've worked with. I've had clients who've become dietitians or psychologists just so they could hopefully help themselves. I've had clients who put themselves through 4 years of university or more, hoping they could get a degree that would teach them how to overcome their own struggles with food. But it doesn't work that way. So if you're a health professional, or if you're any kind of professional, or a business owner, or a leader, or a manager, or a high performer, or maybe you're just someone who has really high expectations of themselves, and for goodness sake, get the help and support you need to get this eating stuff sorted. There is no shame in that. If you've been struggling for a while now, for 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, seriously, what is it going to take before you're willing to seek out the guidance you genuinely need to put all this craziness with food behind you once and for all? So if you're ready to draw that line in the sand and you're ready to draw it now, then the first step is to just book a call. The first step is to go to breakfreenutrition.com/talk, book a call, and let me help you get the clarity and direction you need to move forward. And I can guarantee you this call will be the most powerful 60 minutes you have ever spent talking about your relationship with food. Most people have never had a conversation like this. But you'll never move forward without first having a conversation like this. So go book your call, let's have a chat, and let's get you unstuck and moving forward and making progress. That's it for now. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.